Tim, Syracuse Duke, not great.
No. Yikes.
There you go. Yeah. So what happened?
It was a tough one. The offense just really struggled. I think it was a case of Duke being a desperate team and really needing to win. Duke went into this week as a team that was more on the bubble than Syracuse. Now after this game, their spots have kind of flipped in a way. Although really the ACC, all four teams none of them are locks right now into the tournament. They all have work to do. It's just weird how the conference worked out this year where we could see four teams make it, and the teams that are all going to make it to the ACC tournament will probably have to win a game in the ACC tournament or win a game in the final game of the regular season to feel good about their chances of making the NCAA tournament. So it is just sort of a jumbled mess past like Cornell right now. But, the offense just really struggled, and it's kind of the same discussion that we've had in the past when Syracuse has struggled on offense. They're not drawing slides, which if you don't follow lacrosse super closely, that's basically you're not beating your man initially to draw. A slide is when a help defender comes over and slides over in lacrosse. And without drawing slides, it just felt like they didn't get a ton of great opportunities against Duke, and they didn't put a ton of shots on cage. They were struggling to shoot, period, as well. So really, Syracuse's offense is not built around a lot of dodging threats. It's built around ball movement. And when it's humming and the ball is flying around, it's as pretty as you'll see in college lacrosse. And it just feels like their ball movement was not to the degree that it was 3-4 weeks ago. Really, the last two games, the ball movement has not been as good. And I think it's because teams are daring them to score from the midfield, and they're not sliding to them. And it feels like teams are scouting Syracuse that way. And I do think they're definitely banged up as well offensively and playing through some injuries.
This is a team that is they've lost 4 games total. 3 of those games are away from the Dome. They lost the neutral site game, and they're 2-2 in true road games. Is there a difference, Tim, between the way this team plays, on the fast turf of the Dome versus outside on the road, or is that just a coincidence, I guess, is my question. Or are you noticing something in road games?
I think that has become a narrative around college lacrosse this year, that Syracuse is struggling away from the Dome. And honestly, going into this week, I was kind of pushing back on that narrative because to me, the 2 games that they struggled were against probably the 2 best teams in the country right now, Maryland and Cornell. And I thought it was, the weather didn't help Syracuse in those games. It probably played more into the hands of a Maryland when they went down there early on in the year. But it just, to me, was like, okay, you're playing Maryland and Cornell on the road. You're probably going to struggle. A lot of teams would struggle in that situation. This game was more, okay, maybe there is something to the fact that at home they're a different team. And we'll see this weekend they get UNC now in a really important game at home. And it does feel like you like their chances a lot more right now at home versus how they're playing on the road. So, the way that they play on offense and, the crowds that Syracuse draws at home is like double, triple some of the crowds across the country. So having 11,000 fans there for their last home game against Notre Dame, sure, that definitely gets them juiced up. The players say that, and I think it does make a difference. I think there's something maybe, too, also their offense will just look better in better weather conditions, but this was like a perfect weather day down in Durham on Saturday, so you really can't use that as an excuse, and I don't think the grass fields really had a ton to do with it, but overall they do have a hole in their resume right now in terms of how they play away from the Dome.
You mentioned that this team is banged up. Who in particular are you concerned about right now from a health perspective as the postseason approaches?
Yeah, Owen Hiltz is the biggest one. I mean, he did play the entire game against Duke, but he's not 100%, or at least he was not 100% against Duke. I know he didn't practice at all throughout the week last week, and I think they were kind of not sure if he was going to play up until the last minute. And if you just watch back the Duke game, I think if you've watched Syracuse closely this year and you've watched Owen Hiltz closely this year, you could tell he never even attempted to dodge the entire game. They had him playing around the crease a lot, almost as just like a decoy. And I think there's something to be said for that. Like, he was still drawing Duke's second best defender throughout the game. And sometimes Syracuse wants to play 5-on-5 on offense or keep the face-off guy out there to create more space. So I kind of see the strategy they were going with. It's just a bummer because I think Finn Thompson is now back, and we saw him for the first time, and he's getting closer to 100% after missing the last 6 games, and now Owen Hiltz is banged up. And it looks like Michael Leo took like a stinger during that game and maybe wasn't quite himself for the second half as well. So it's not, I mean, it's an excuse that everyone across the country is making. Lacrosse, you get a lot of injuries. The other thing is Nate Levine, their short stick D midi. It seems like he tore his ACL during that game, which was, it looked like at least a serious injury, and he sort of left on crutches. So we'll see on that front how they kind of recover that position. So they've been banged up more than in recent years, but they are also a very deep team, and a lot of teams are dealing with injuries this time of year.
All right, so you mentioned a very important game inside the Dome against North Carolina. What is on the line? The winner of this one, in your opinion, safely in the tournament at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so if they win this game, they win the ACC regular season. They're the 1 seed, and they're likely playing Duke again. Duke would probably be the 4 seed. Duke plays Virginia this week. Virginia hasn't won an ACC game yet. That is basically a play-in game for the 4 seed. And I think if Duke takes care of business against Virginia, which they have actually beaten Virginia every year in the regular season since, I think, 2004. It's like a crazy streak. I think they probably will win that game. Basically, Syracuse is either the 1 seed in the tournament or the 4 seed. So they're probably going to be in the 1-4 game on Friday regardless. But if you're the 4 seed and you lose to UNC, you would be playing Notre Dame. If they lose and Duke wins, and Duke's the 3 seed and Syracuse is the 4 seed, they will draw Notre Dame as the 1 seed, and Notre Dame will be looking for revenge. They lost to Syracuse in the regular season. They're the 2-time defending national champs. So, I mean, I think we said going back to kind of the start of conference play, what does Syracuse need to make sure they make the tournament? I think we said they needed to win 2 games, and they've won 1 since then. I think going back to after the Virginia game, we had that conversation. They beat Notre Dame. They've lost the last 2. It would just be a really tough look, I think, in the committee's eyes if they lose their last 4 games, and then you're looking at a resume that has really declined over the last month or so. But I do think, given where the ACC RPI rankings are right now and everything, there's going to be at least 3 ACC teams to make the tournament, and if you are just one of the top 3 resumes from the ACC, you'll be in there. I think there could still be 4 teams that make the tournament out of the ACC. The problem is if there's a bid stealer, the ACC would probably then become a 3-bid league instead of a 4-bid league. So you don't want to be susceptible to bid stealing.
Last lacrosse question before we move on quickly to other things. Let's say that Syracuse beats Carolina and makes the NCAA tournament, regardless of what happens in the ACC tournament, regardless of what happens with their record. Do you think, just on face value, this team is capable, good enough to go to a Final Four and contend for a national title, or has your opinion of this team changed the last few weeks?
I think they need a healthier team than what they have right now, and I don't know the extent. I mean, you hope that Owen Hiltz looks more like 100% this week. Because I just think, he had 6 points against Cornell. I think he's one of the best players in the country. If anything, he's underrated. He's such a smart lacrosse player. And to me, he's a guy that they would need him at 100% to make it to championship weekend. And they probably just need to tie up some things defensively and offensively going forward. But yeah, given where things are in lacrosse this year. Duke is probably now going into this week thinking, yeah, we can make championship weekend. And last week they were, having conversations around Durham probably, how are we going to make the tournament? Right. That's how quickly it can change. If they beat UNC on Saturday, which I think they will beat UNC, it's a home game. They played really well at home. They're now kind of the desperate team like Duke was last week. If they win that game, they're really just back on track to the same conversations we were having throughout much of the year, which is you should be hosting, and you should be looking at potentially getting a championship weekend.
All right, a couple of quick women's basketball questions before we go. Kristen Sharkey named head coach at Buffalo. How big of a loss is this for Coach Jack and her staff?
Yeah, big loss. I think she's a great coach. I think it's awesome for her as an alum. Played for Coach Jack, then was an assistant coach for Coach Jack when they took Buffalo to the Sweet 16, and very well deserved. So I think, a dream come true for her, really, and makes a ton of sense. Definitely a loss. She was not in the recruiting role like she was a couple years ago when she first started at Syracuse. Kyrie Carter is now the recruiting coordinator, kind of head of recruiting. So I think given the timing of this, it's good in a way that she's not like overseeing the portal or recruiting and stuff like that as much as maybe Kyrie Carter. But yeah, she was, helping the bigs and the post player sort of role or post player coach. So I think it is a tough loss. I'm sure they'll find someone as quickly as possible and try and fill that spot.
And then lastly, some additions out of the portal for the women. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think they've done an all right job to this point. No like headliner, but they're bringing in a lot of players from power conference level. And the question is, can they develop them and kind of prove that these players are maybe being underutilized at the likes of Miami and some of the power conference schools that they picked up. Auburn, they got a post player from. So I think overall they've addressed the positions of need in the portal. It's just going to come down to how quickly can they develop the players that didn't put together a ton of production at the power conference level.
All right, Tim, great stuff as always. We do have to run. We're a little bit behind here. Andy Staples from On3, National College Football host. He'll join us next on ESPN Radio.